So what I did is I told my team, guess who your first patient is? Me. So, so it has to work, right?
Right.
So it will get hard. Sometimes it's very, very hard. And how do you get through it, right? It's, so do you have enough confidence in yourself that you can learn it? You can figure this out.
Mhm.
You can get through it. You have to have that confidence, and that confidence needs to come from somewhere.
All good? All right. Hi, Wei.
Hi, Ali. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm glad to hear. Welcome to the UC Berkeley campus.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for making it. Really appreciate your time. So, I want to get through a lot in this interview. There is
Okay.
so much to unpack. But starting off, I mean, as we've seen, you're a woman of many firsts. You have developed the first biotech healthcare company on the mainnet. You have the first patented supply chain system that uses blockchain and genetics to bring information and data to individuals going IVF. And you've made history in 2021 when you store your own eggs on the blockchain. So I want to get to all of this. It's incredibly exciting to be working on the things you're working on. But first, I'm just very curious on what led you down this road. What led you down this path?
Yeah. So I think I have always been fascinated about doing things that people have never done before. I think it's always easier for me to kind of like forge my own way. Like if I have an objective and don't tell me what to do and then let me figure it out, right? So I've always been more fascinated by doing things as such. So specifically for Eggschain, my best friend froze her eggs about 5 or 6 years ago. And I thought it was a great, kind of like, if we were to use a blockchain to document certain critical events of freezing her eggs, it would be very helpful. Because freezing eggs or having certain medical procedures are, binary. So you either froze your eggs or you didn't,
Mm,
or you either made eggs or you didn't, right?
mm,
You either made 30 eggs or you made three, right? And either 15 of your eggs pass to stage 4 or they didn't, right?
mm,
So it's very binary. And there's very little gray area, it's very little interpretation. It's not that, like, you can say, well, it can be interpreted that I got pregnant, right? I mean, you're either pregnant or you're not pregnant, right? So I think the blockchain is a great application for medical procedures and for healthcare records.
mm,
So I first had the idea of putting the human eggs on the blockchain. Then a natural extension is sperm. Then is any genetic material.
mm,
Then is any healthcare record. So the company just kind of like broadened, if you will, and then our patent for portfolio also got broadened.
mm,
So now what we say is that Xchain brings a hacker-resistant system
mhm,
to keep track of your medical records, so that in the event of a hacking, incident into your health systems,
mhm,
and your hospitals shut down indefinitely, right? So
mhm,
no, when you have a hacker hack into your system or ransomware, there is no finite predetermined time, right? Like, okay, so
mhm.
we're going to be down for precisely 3 weeks. It doesn't work that way, right? So
Yeah.
you don't know, right? So your procedures are canceled, including radiation, chemotherapy, knee replacement. All the procedures are canceled until further notice.
Mhm,
So what we think is that if you put such critical medical records and treatment plan on the blockchain, so in our case, we strategically chose the Bitcoin blockchain,
mm,
and that will help you access your critical information in times of need, so that you can actually bring your healthcare record, the mission critical ones, right? Not your entire, electronic medical records,
Yeah.
but just the critical ones. What are your allergies? What are your vaccine records
Yeah.
and your treatment plan? Your radiation plan, and then you have access to that. So you have the option to go to a different hospital.
Very
So that
interesting.
right,
Yeah.
or you can talk to your doctor. Like, okay, what can we do? Right, like
You just then have the option,
exactly,
essentially.
right.
Yeah.
I think more inventions can, come as a result of that. And then, so first of all, thank you for doing the homework. You asked some really good questions. So to be
Hmm.
so you asked, you're the first to put your own eggs on the blockchain,
Yeah.
right? So really, we wanted to test out the system, right?
Hmm.
So before we let other people use it, we need to make sure that this works perfectly.
Right.
So what I did is I told my team, guess who your first patient is? Me. So, so it has to work, right?
Right.
So that's the thought behind that.
So tell me, because like let's maybe back up a little on
Yeah.
very layman terms. What does it mean to put eggs on the blockchain? What
Right.
does it mean to put healthcare records also on the blockchain?
Right. So we chose the Bitcoin blockchain because it's the world's oldest and most battle tested and decentralized blockchain. And we think it's the most likely one to last forever. There might be other ones that will last forever or a long time, but we think if there's one that will last forever, it's the Bitcoin blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer your question directly, what so to put your healthcare record on the blockchain means that there's certain verbiage that can be put on the Bitcoin blockchain through the Lightning protocol, verbiage like words,
Mm-hmm.
like your treatment plan, dosage, unit X,
Mm-hmm.
medicine Y, I have 8 eggs or 30 eggs,
Mm-hmm.
and canister B, vial 3, um, allergic to medicine Z, so
Mm-hmm.
those verbiage can be on the blockchain,
Mm-hmm.
and no patient identifiable information are associated with it. So
Mm.
that's why it's HIPAA compliant. So that's what it means. So
Yeah.
to answer your second question directly, what does it mean to put your eggs on the blockchain?
Yeah.
It's the information of your eggs. What are the stages of your eggs that achieved, right? Stage 4, right? Versus, you know, because, your eggs are very likely to become an embryo
Mm-hmm.
if it reaches certain milestones, right?
Okay.
So we don't necessarily want to freeze any eggs and all of your eggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are certain eggs that only reached like stage 1 or 2 or 3 and it didn't reach stage 4.
Right.
So there's, so if you ask my doctor, they would say there is no point to freeze the ones that only reached stage 1, 2, and 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
We should just throw it away because they are not likely, it's almost always unlikely
Mm-hmm.
to reach an embryo stage.
Okay.
So then, so you document. So here are the eggs that actually reach the stage where there's a high likelihood that an embryo will be formed.
Okay.
So yeah, so like
Very
it's good to document such things, right? And it's good to know,
interesting.
and it's good to remember because you might have frozen your eggs or sperm
Mm-hmm.
many years ago, right? Or you could have a knee surgery many years ago, or you could
Mm-hmm.
have a shoulder surgery when you play professional sports, right? Like
Right.
play football or rugby or basketball or baseball.
Yeah.
Like you could have had a certain injury.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a rupture or is it inflammation or is it a tear? Right? What is it?
Mm.
And what uh, ligament was it? Right? It's good to
Yeah.
keep track of those things.
For sure.
And then what did the doctor do? Right? Did they replace the ligament? And which ligament did they replace? Right? Did
Mm.
they kind of like repair it, or did they replace it from your own ligament, or did they replace it from a dead person,
Yeah.
right? Like a who
Yeah.
voluntarily donated there. So it's good to keep track of all this information,
Yeah.
and especially if you have had like 13, 14, 15 injuries, right? And you are like all over the place, right?
Hmm.
One day you played, if you're an athlete, you played in Texas. Another day you played in California. Then
Hmm.
another day you played in Alabama, right? Like those, big sports stadiums,
Yeah.
right? Like, and you went to different doctors, right? So it's kind of good to keep
Quite
track of.
fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's quite fascinating. And so the goal is to put all of this very sensitive, very important information on a decentralized system that can essentially last forever and get access to any time whenever it need be.
exactly.
That's
Yes,
awesome. So
yes,
I must say I'm very curious on,
yeah,
you did mention your friend and then how she was
yeah,
getting her eggs frozen. Then you realized this would be cool. Was that the birth of Eggschain? Or
yes.
was that there was like a moment after that we realized this could also be a company, we can sell this, we can figure out
Yes,
how to make it.
absolutely. So the company kind of like grew organically, right? So at first, I thought this is a good idea, and so I talked to my kind of like my blockchain friends. They
Okay.
they say it's a good idea, right?
So you started first with the
Right,
technical
right,
people,
right,
the
right.
blockchain
Technical
people.
people, yeah, they say it's a good idea. Then I asked my business friends, and they said this is a great idea.
Mm.
And then I went around the country and looked for the best physicians and PhDs and
Mm.
asked them if this is a great idea.
Damn.
And they all said it's a great idea. So I started the company, right? Because
Wow.
as starting a company, it takes a lot of time and energy and resources and
Right?
commitment and opportunity cost, right? So I had to be sure that this is something that it is a important thing, right? But of course,
Mm.
before that, I went to apply a bunch of patents, so just to make sure, then it kind of like the rest of it concurrently happened, right? So this is a big
That's
thing,
so
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned the opportunity cost and what you need to essentially give up to start something like a
Right,
company, especially in a
right,
field where so many patents, so no one has done this before.
right, right,
So
right,
it's
right.
it's a huge risk, and you have to really have a lot of initiative and passion for the thing. And also looking at your background, you didn't work something close to healthcare or whatnot. You were mostly focusing on the business side of things as a brand manager, an executive in that regard. So how was that shift to work into
Yeah,
into healthcare?
yeah, absolutely. So, when I was at Procter and Gamble, I actually worked in the personal healthcare division. So, right out of business school, that was my area of focus. So I worked in the personal healthcare division for 3 years.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with the regulations. I'm very familiar with the kind of like the bar to climb, right?
Hmm.
Certain things, is needs FDA approval. Certain things doesn't need FDA approval,
Right.
and what regulatory, bodies are needed. So when I was at Procter and Gamble, it's like, okay, so brand management is kind of like everything, right? So
Mm.
from idea inception to prototyping to scaling up in a factory to selling, putting in the stores, and to measure the results. So I did it all.
Wow.
So it's really like product development. If you think about leading a new product development, it's
Yeah.
pretty technical. So I was able to touch everything. Then I did it a
Mm.
few more times. I did it at Kraft Foods. I
Yeah.
did it at Frito Lay in Dallas or
Right.
Plano, and I did it again at Valvoline. So it's kind of like it's it's very familiar because just because I've done it so many times,
Right.
and so healthcare is, I think, in my opinion, I think healthcare it takes a lot of diligence,
Mm.
because it's not a game, right? If it's a game, if it doesn't work, nothing bad happens, right?
Right.
You
Right.
just you get frustrated, you go and do something else, right? Like you stop playing the game, right?
Right.
I mean a computer game. But I think healthcare, so it's just a different level of diligence. So
100%. The
um,
stakes are just much higher in healthcare.
exactly, exactly. And I'm very fortunate to have very good people working on my team.
Hmm.
So everybody, we share the same respect for the field, and we share the same, need for accuracy and diligence. So
Yeah.
I think it's a very smooth transition. Actually, it's very interesting. If you ask my team members, like, what do they like to do during their free time? honestly is reading articles. So we read articles, we read more articles. I write articles. My team review the articles I write
Mm.
and change and update. So it's just like, this is what everybody does anyways,
Yeah, that's
So
fascinating.
yeah, so it's
And
kind of
that's why,
fun.
yeah, it's bringing the passion really to it, and
Right.
that's what helps you excel. Be essentially, we heard this at another talk recently that the founder was talking about how when you get to that, if you go to a good uni and you study hard, you're gonna get to 95th percentile of people in your field.
Right.
But what's gonna carry you really to that
Yes.
99th is the passion. Is you
Right.
do this in your free time anyways.
Right.
It doesn't
Exactly.
even feel like work to you. So
Exactly. Exactly. In fact, our chief scientific officer, Dr. Ken Drury, said something very interesting. um, I think he's representative of, kind of like the rest of the team. And he's like, when I'm kind of like not happy about, the news or whatever,
mhm.
when I need to get happy or when I need a distraction, I read scientific articles.
As a pastime.
Right, right. Or as a getting yourself to be in a happy mode
Wow,
process, right? So it's just like this is just kind of like what we do,
that's
and
amazing.
yeah, so it's kind of like yeah, it's what you do on your free time. So it's what you do when you're not happy and you want to get happy,
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yes, it's kind
amazing.
of interesting. Accurate, yeah.
That's so cool. And you've touched on a couple of points I really want to expand upon because,
Sure.
students would probably be listening to this as well and
Yeah.
prospective founders. So you talked about the reps that you've built working in corporate and essentially building up the muscle for
Right.
this type of thing. Essentially, how do you feel that has affected you as a founder now, and what skills did you transfer there? And
Yeah.
then also, for people that want to just go straight into founding a startup, they have a great idea, they just want to go and figure it out. What do you think is the right balance there?
Yeah, that's a very, very I think it requires a delicate answer. I think it's a
Yeah.
very, very important question, and I thought about it a lot. So let me answer your questions one at a time. So
Sure.
first of all, what skill set, did the muscle build was helpful? Absolutely. So absolutely, it was helpful, and everything I learned from brand management to business development to leading product development to PR to writing,
Mhm.
writing, and it all translated to founding Eggschain. Because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, when you don't have the money to hire somebody to do it, you have to do it. And
Right.
somebody has to do it. And even when I was at Procter& and Gamble, it's very interesting. So I was a like a kind of like grade one employee. So um, they grade employees, you're either a one or two or three.
Mm.
So I was a one rated employee. And so if you look at all the one rated employees, they can do everything. So
Mm.
I literally could do everything. So I could,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean that I want to or
Yeah.
I will. But when push comes to shove, I can do it.
Okay.
That's um, so then I think you had a second question, but the
Right.
third question, I forgot your second question, but I'm going to answer
All
your
right.
third
Answer
question
however you
first.
want
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the third question is, do you think a student should go straight to start a startup,
Mhm.
or should they gain experiences from work first? You know, like an easy way out would for me to say it depends, but I don't want to pick the easy way out, right? I think it's probably you have a higher chance of succeeding if you have a lot of experience, right? Like if you almost don't make any mistakes, if you
Mm.
have made the mistakes earlier in your life and you don't make those mistakes when you are,
Mm.
kind of like doing this startup, right?
Okay.
It will save you money, and maybe it will increase your chance of success.
Okay.
I'm thinking, I don't know, but like it's not like, I would be more qualified to answer the question if I have lived this life
Both of
like
them.
40
Yeah.
times, right? Like n greater than 40, right? So I've
Yeah.
lived the same life 40 times, one, 20 times I started as a founder right away after college or after high school. the other 20 times I started as an experienced
Has
person,
that
right?
crossed your mind when you were in university? Did you think that you want to go into startups immediately, or was that not part of the plan?
Um, I think when I was in university, I wanted to join a company to see what it's like.
Okay.
Because I think joining a company, like, if you look at the companies I worked at American Express, I worked at Procter and Gamble, I worked at Cisco Systems, I worked at a lot of places. Like, I
Mm.
learned something at every place. I
Yeah.
literally learned something. And at every job, I got to go to different places, right? Like travel. So when I was at Valvoline, I got to go to like Daytona 500s. I got to go to
Mm.
all the racing events because I was running the sports sponsorship. I got to go to, Hendrix Motorsports, the
Yeah.
headquarters. It's a lot of fun. I think when I first graduated college, I wanted to just to kind of like see what's out there, and
Yeah.
working at various companies enabled me to, travel like everywhere to
Mm.
the United States. Every week I was in a different city. So I would literally leave on Monday morning, then I'll come back Thursday night. I'm in a different city in the country
Wow.
every week. And it's just very interesting, staying at different hotels. I never knew which hotel I'm going to stay at until I land, right? Then I look up, which hotel I'm going to stay at. Then I run a car, like any car I can,
Wow.
any car is available, right? So I learned to drive different cars. I think it's fun. But to answer your question,
Mm.
I didn't think about running,
Yeah.
starting a startup right away. And also another important thing of starting a startup, I think you have to have a good idea. I
Hmm.
think you cannot have you're like, oh, I want to be a billionaire.
Yeah. You don't
So
start with the end goal.
right. And then I'm just gonna invent a startup right now. Like why don't you and I just sit down on a piece of paper and we're gonna invent a startup and we're gonna become a billionaire, right? It doesn't work that way, right? So I think it's the idea has to come to you somehow, right? And
Hmm.
then you either have been thinking about it all your life, but then the question is, so the idea you thought about when you were 10 years old and now you're 20, that idea may not be relevant, right? You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Times change.
so yeah, so timing, right? And then I don't, so don't take my word too well, right? Because until maybe Elon Musk is a better person to answer this question, but he's very successful, right? So as a just a founder who's
Mhm.
still in the journey of building a startup,
Yeah.
um, I think you have to have a good idea. You have to be able to assemble a good team, and you have to do a lot of the things, right? Like let's say the startup, needs it needs 150 things to happen, right, for the
Hmm.
startup to become somewhat successful. I think you have to be able to do 130 of them.
You as a founder
You as a
yourself.
founder
Yeah.
yourself, right? Or you if you're a co-founder, the other person can do some, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, so I think you have to do a lot. You have
That's
to be able
fascinating.
to do a lot, when push comes
Hmm.
to shove, right?
Yeah. And
If you
so with
yeah.
your work experience, I'm gonna guess that starting Xchain, you knew that you were going to be able to carry,
Yes.
a lot of the things and figure
Absolutely.
it out. And
Yeah.
then tell me more
Absolutely.
about your co-founder or
Yeah.
who's the early team that started
Yeah,
on
yeah,
this
yeah.
idea.
So Dr. Kendry, he is a proud Vietnam veteran, and so he served in the U.S. Army. He fought in Vietnam, and he was trained in Panama. And he actually, like I shared earlier, with you before the interview, he actually was a postdoc at UC Berkeley. So he's a proud alumni of Berkeley.
Go Bears.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Dr. Kendry. Yeah, and so he is really the first investor of our company,
Mhm.
and so then he joined us as a chief scientific officer. Actually, everybody is an investor. So everybody who's on the core
Very
team is
interesting.
an investor. Everybody is an investor. So, and I invested into the company as well. So we all are investors. So so the team, so Dr. Drury, he received his PhD at University of Geneva, and he did his postdoc at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
And he's one of the first high complexity lab directors in the country, in the
Mhm.
United States. And he received the Bronze Star for his bravery in Vietnam.
Wow.
He did great things in Vietnam. And so he told me a lot about the war. I know a lot. I know way too much about not too much, I know so much about the
Wow.
Vietnam War than the average person just because, he fought in the war, so it's very interesting. So
Yeah.
Dr. Drury is wonderful.
How'd you
So
guys meet and then
yeah,
convince him really with
yeah,
this
yeah.
idea? How
Yeah.
did that? Tell
So
me the story behind it.
yeah, so we met in a medical conference, and so Dr. Drury is very brave, and he asked the tough questions,
Mm,
at a medical conference. He spoke his mind, and he asked the tough questions.
wow.
And so I like that. I
Mm,
like people who ask tough questions. I like
mm,
people who ask good questions. And so I just run this idea by him, and he absolutely loved it.
mm.
So Dr. Drury has a lot of talent, a lot of serious medical talents, so he knows a lot about cellular biology. He worked in cellular biology, molecular biology, and lots of different aspects of medicine.
Amazing.
He knows so many things. He's a lifelong learner. He's just brilliant, and he's very easy to talk to too.
That's
Because
amazing.
like if you meet somebody who fought in a war, right? Who
Hmm.
came back and who then did his PhD, then did
Yeah.
his postdoc, right? Like I'm sure war comes with trauma, right? I never
Yeah.
fought in a war before, but I can only
Of
imagine.
course. Yeah.
So you have to overcome all this trauma, right? So the kind of mental toughness that you have to
Mm,
have. And then so
mm.
Dr. Drew and I went to Serbia together last
Oh
year.
wow.
It was fantastic, and he was my bodyguard. So he's really great. He's very strong. He's very great. I can defend myself too, but but Dr. Drury
But
is
having
better.
a Vietnam
Yeah, yeah,
veteran
that's
is just
right.
something
Yeah,
else.
yeah, that's true. But so Dr. Carolyn
Mm,
Thompson is our medical director, and
okay.
she's also an investor as well. So she actually came to us through one of our early investors.
Hmm.
So Jumpstart Healthcare is one of our early investors, and Dr. Thompson was referred to us by one of our investors. So,
Very interesting.
yeah, so Thompson and I, so Carolyn Thompson and I, kind of like worked together virtually for about a year before she came on board as our
Mm,
medical director. Yeah, so
okay.
Dr. Thompson had her own clinic for 20 some years.
Hmm.
So she's a physician, businesswoman. So she's a physician first. She's a board certified OBGYN, and she's also a businesswoman. She had her own P&L. She run her own clinic. She knows a lot about diseases. She knows a lot about, of course, OBGYN related matters,
Yeah.
surgery
Yeah.
and everything. So yeah, I think we have a very well-rounded team. We have a
Definitely. It sounds like
PhD.
it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
And
it.
like I think it always starts with because hiring the right team is probably the hardest thing I would say at an early stage startup. And when you have that, you essentially can, as you mentioned, just go out and do all of the
Right,
necessary things and then
right.
figure yourself out. And so I'm very curious on how do you pitch to those people to convince them this is a great idea. You should come here. Does it start like that, or does it start by
No.
knowing them? Yeah.
Yeah, it starts by knowing them. So I think in my case, so everybody is different, right? Everybody is different. Every founder is different. So I can only
Yeah.
speak
Of
for
course.
myself. Yeah,
I'm
that's
curious
okay. Yeah,
about
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you. So for my case, my assessment is that every time we speak, whether it's Dr. Carolyn Thompson or Dr. Drury, they learn something from me, and I definitely learn something from them.
Mhm.
So it's a mutual, every time we interact, is a mutual improvement of our knowledge and expertise and
Mhm.
experience. So it's not just like I'm trying to convince them to to join the company. They want to join the company. They
Mm.
all wanted to join the company. They asked to join the company.
Mm.
So and that's most of our team member because it's not just it's a good idea, right? And it's
Right.
like, imagine, every time somebody interact with you, they get smarter. So they, and these people, they are scholars, right? They're
Right.
learner people. They like learning. they enjoy learning.
Right.
That's why they went to medical school, right? That's why they got a PhD. So they like improving themselves. So it's a very easy
Mm.
integration because it's just and if you get along personally, right?
Yeah.
Your personality match, and that's why we've been working together for years. I mean, we've been working together for like so many years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's
So
just
that's
we get
really
along.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we get along.
it's a very interesting thing to bring up. So picking back up, lastly, we were just like also discussing this point about working with scientists in general, and I think you've mentioned a really important thing when recruiting scientists. It's this concept of they're the people who want to learn always,
Right.
and so as long as they're working on something that's stimulating and you're learning by talking to each other one way or another, it just helps with that team formation, and then you can convince them essentially to join companies with good ideas, with all of that. It's not just about I have a great idea, I have a great business plan, join my company,
Right,
right?
right.
It's more
Or
about
they want to join your company.
yeah,
If they initiate joining your company, that would be,
that would be the best
yes,
route
correct.
into it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
fascinating. And so now I'm also very curious on essentially the story moving forward. Where do
Right.
you see for the industry itself for putting, this medical record information on the blockchain? Where do you see the future for that?
Yeah.
And how does Eggschain lead that future?
Yeah. So what we do is this is what we say. We put mission critical medical records and the treatment plan on the Bitcoin blockchain. And so moving forward, we do hold the patents on this arena. So we will be the company that lead the charge. And we strategically chose the Bitcoin blockchain, like we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's the oldest and most battle tested and decentralized blockchain and most likely to last.
Right.
And so moving forward, we think that in the event of your health system goes down, and
Right.
it always happens, all centralized systems suffer from the same weakness, which is it can be attacked. And then when it's attacked, it's a indefinite amount of days or weeks
Mm-hmm.
until the issue is resolved, right? So
Right.
hopefully the issue will be resolved in 1 day, 2 day, 3 days.
Wow.
But often the last major incident, it took 5 weeks for the issue to be resolved. So procedures are canceled for 5 weeks. And the implications of 5 weeks of hospital shutdown means canceled procedures,
Mm-hmm.
including non critical procedures. Like
Right.
even though we think all procedures are critical, but there are kind of like gunshot wounds, right? Like
Yeah.
dying kind of situation immediately. But like radiations are canceled too, and like knee replacement or lots of surgeries. So
So
we
there's
think
a wide spectrum of
yes,
surgeries that
yeah,
can
that are
happen.
canceled, and a lot of things can happen. So what we think is that we put your treatment plan without your patient identifiable information, your treatment plan on the blockchain, and some mission critical information like what are the allergies that you have, or allergic reaction to certain medicine. What are the medicines that because you may not know how to spell it, right? Because those are usually
Yeah.
very long words, two very long words, right? So we think that we can serve a critical role in
Mm-hmm.
this matter, and we think that it will improve patients' lives and leads to better healthcare outcome, right?
That's
Because
amazing.
even the news has reported that such cancel procedures are a bigger problem than
Mm-hmm.
your for the lack of a better word, is more important than your identity gets stolen, right? Your identity gets stolen is very, very bad, but
Right. But
if
if you
you
have this
die,
critical, yeah,
that's worse,
that's way
right?
worse.
Yeah, that's way worse. Yeah. So that's what we're hoping to see. And additionally, I moved around many, many, many times.
Mm.
So prior to founding Exchange, I moved around a lot. And every place I moved around, there is a set of records, whether it's regular doctor or OBGYN or dental, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So we can help patients to consolidate those records. So essentially, Xchain has has those records, the important one, not
Yeah.
8 a.m., I have a doctor's appointment. That's electronic medical records. We're not electronic medical records. So
Hmm.
we store the mission critical results. So that's one thing that, we can help you consolidate, and is also on the Bitcoin blockchain. So
Yeah.
so you can, access it in both ways, and then if you want to keep a stack of paper in your in your house, that's good too. You have more, right? But if you
Yeah.
move around, it might be in storage.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Xchain will have a set of copies. The Bitcoin blockchain has a set of copies, and you have a set of copies, maybe in your basement, if you
Yeah.
don't move around, right? And then your various healthcare providers, like if you have 30 of them, they
Mhm.
each have bits and pieces of
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
this can easily just tie into all the healthcare ecosystem and things getting
correct.
set up to consolidate, because this has been a big problem in healthcare for generations now. So this is a very interesting way of looking at this new technology, and I think we do live in that age where technology now is enabling all of the things that we thought were dreams at some point, with AI,
Right.
with blockchain.
Right,
So
right, right.
it's really, it's always fascinating to us as patients, as consumers,
Yeah,
to see that the marriage of these two industries, and then how they can come together to create such fascinating things.
yeah.
And on addition to that, on understanding kind of the vision
Right.
with Xchain and where it's going, there's a very interesting story you have on your
Mm.
website.
Oh,
Right?
tell me which
So
story.
it's the story, or I believe the year is
Oh,
2099,
right,
right?
right, right,
So
right, right.
tell me about how that came about, who thought of this story,
So
and
yeah,
what does it represent?
so you definitely did your homework. Yeah, so it's very interesting. So I wrote that story
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So
So maybe tell us, what is the story, and then
okay,
how
yeah.
did the process of coming up with it happen?
Yeah, this is this is a funny story. But so that story was born in the era of the NFTs, right? Non fungible
Hmm.
tokens.
Yeah.
So so some Saturdays I have nothing to do. Saturday afternoon, so I either write a medical article, or I write a scientific article, or I write a technological article, or I write a story,
Okay.
or I write a song, something. So there's one weekend I just had nothing to do, and I don't know, that story just came to me. So let me tell you, like,
Yeah.
the,
Tell
the
me the story.
story. Yeah. So sometimes after I read the story, then I forget, but I will
Hmm.
tell you to the best of my recollection. So there was a young man named Evan. He so the backdrop
Yeah.
is civilization has gone to pieces. So
Mm.
we regressed to tribal state
Mhm.
due to a collision with another rogue planet, right? There's
Mm.
a planet that flow around and hit the earth, and
Okay.
and so we regress to tribal state, right? So we don't
Right.
have technology, we have nothing.
Mhm.
And so there is a evil dictator named it started with an X,
Yeah.
Xavier or whatever. Not Xavier.
Let's call him Xavier.
No, Xavier. Xavier is a real name. Yeah, it's a beautiful name. But like, because I needed to look for a name that's not a real name,
Mhm.
but Xavier is a really nice name.
Okay.
I like Xavier.
Let's call him Dictator X.
Right, Dictator X. Yeah, Dictator X. So this Dictator X decided to change history.
Mhm.
And he decided to burn all the books. He decided to destroy all centralized record because he can. Because centralized records are prone to
Yeah.
attack,
They're
right?
susceptible to
So
that.
so the part of the reason I wrote the story mostly is for fun, and then other things like we want to kind of like
Mhm.
tell a story about the blockchain, right? Maybe educate the
Yeah.
blockchain to the best of our abilities, or to confuse people. I'm kidding.
I
No, but
mean, it gave me a very good idea, because I
right,
read it, and it's essentially, yeah, so this emperor, and he destroys all records.
right,
No
right.
one can access it anymore. And he also, I believe he makes marriage and love is
Right.
like a mandatory thing. It's a pairing. No
Right,
more,
right.
no
No more
more,
free love,
no
right?
more free love.
No more free will, no more
Yeah.
free agency, no more free love, right? So yes,
Mhm.
exactly. So, so because I thought about, okay, this story needs to be epic, right? So it has
Yeah.
to have love and war, it has to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
death, right? It has to like, and then the rest of the story goes, Evan become, dismayed. And so he used to race cars, and
Mhm.
then now he practice sword fighting, right? So
Mhm.
the story says, I used to be in the racing industry, right? So I used
Oh,
to,
yeah.
yeah. So I loved racing. I love cars, and
I
so I
could see the
love.
inspiration for
Yeah,
it.
so
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. So it's kind of like, it's mostly started as a joke, and I was like, why not? It's kind of funny. And then like sword fighting is just cool, right? Like fencing, it's kind of like, like
Yeah.
sword fighting. And then so then he met a female named Kathy.
Mhm.
These are all my friends' names. They're
You
all my
made them
friends.
heroes.
That's right. Yeah, why not? Made them heroes. And then Kathy helped, and then she has magical powers, right? She can read minds, because why not?
Mhm.
She give her powers, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, so these two were able to defeat. Oh no, actually, with the help of physicians, with the
Oh,
help of
yeah, there was the
OBGYNs,
doctors.
with the help of REIs, that stands for reproductive endocrinology and infertility specialist. With REIs and PhDs, they were able to, kind of like, because there are, so the idea is there are sperm and eggs
Mhm.
scattered everywhere, but because the centralized record were destroyed, nobody knows where they were, right? But
Mm.
they heard there was a thing called Eggschain, right? So in the
Mhm.
story, it was kind of a little bit confusing. Um, we said Eggschain is a blockchain. Eggschain is not a blockchain. We
Yeah.
use the Bitcoin blockchain, but
Yeah.
it was just so, because you don't want to use real things, right? So if
Yeah.
you say, oh, the Bitcoin blockchain, then it's a real thing, right? So you have to have
Yeah.
fictional things,
There's
right?
the
Like,
exchange blockchain.
right, the
Yeah.
Eggschain blockchain doesn't exist, so it's okay because it's fictional.
Yeah.
And then, so then, in the end, the evil is defeated, and then we didn't kill the evil dictator. He killed
Mhm.
himself. You see, so he made a boo boo, he made a mistake, and then he died. So we didn't kill him. Neither Ivan or
Yeah.
Kathy killed him. So he killed himself. So we didn't, no violence,
No
right? So
violence.
PG-13. So that's kind of like the story. That's how I wrote the story. It's just funny.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
funny. And then in fact we have NFTs too, but
Yeah.
we didn't release the NFTs. We still have it. It's really beautiful. It's very well made. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll turn it into something else. It's a
It's
fun
an idea
project.
for now. Yeah.
It's kind of part of our fun projects. Keep the morale high of the
That could be
team.
cool. Yeah. That
Yeah,
could be
keep
cool.
the morale high, and have great assets, right? Like, so image is asset, right? Like
Of course.
videos are assets. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
So
just
that's why
fun
I
thing. Yeah, yeah.
adaptate.
Great,
It's
great,
a
great homework that you've done. Yeah,
I mean,
usually
it's
nobody asks me that question.
they
This
really
is
should, because
great.
I think like when we were first learning about Exchange, we were
Right.
first learning about well, why do we need this? What does this mean? What does it look like? And there was a lot of mention of like in the case of severe things, but then also the daily usage of medical records when you need them, as you said, when you're moving. And so it's like, what can be severe enough? And so
Right.
it's a very great way. It's like a way that I would picture, right? Okay, guys, imagine there's this evil dictator. He destroys all the records. How are we going to know
Right.
where our eggs and sperm are safe? How are we
Exactly.
going to bring civilization back to where it
Yes.
was? And so it's like, oh, okay, I see it.
Yes,
where it
yes,
comes from.
exactly. And then in the story, yeah, thank you for reminding me. So I don't know if other writers do this. It's like you forgot what you wrote. So remember the Rook planet, it had radiation. So it killed our reproductive abilities. It's true, actually. If you go to space and if you live in space for a long time, your eggs gets destroyed.
Oh, wow.
So it could get destroyed. So it's
Mm,
true. So other, a lot of it is true. It's scientifically correct, but
very interesting.
we don't
Yeah.
want to use real things like the Bitcoin blockchain, right? So referencing the real things are not there, but
but it is still can
scientifically true,
happen.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, scientifically true, correct? Yeah. So then, so then we cannot reproduce, and then the human race are gonna die.
Hmm.
So, but luckily we have those eggs and sperm, and they're frozen, and the liquid nitrogen tanks can resist the radiation. So yeah, so
Okay.
you see, yeah, it's all very well
It
thought
adds up.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
It really does.
yeah, so it's very, very funny. It took me like maybe 3 hours to write that story on a
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon. It's super fun, it's just, and then I use the image of Miami, because I really like
Yeah.
Miami. And then like, Miami is kind of like super cool, right? Like the Miami Vice, it's kind of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
there's race
It's a
cars,
skyline.
Yeah, yeah, there's cars and there's like sword fighting,
It's
yeah,
amazing.
so it's just funny, it's a fun project. It really
I
is,
highly
yeah.
recommend anyone listening to this to go on the Exchange website NFT page and read the story for yourself. It will, if you already don't see the potential or anything, you're gonna get to see the most outlandish way of looking at it.
Right, right, right.
And I guess that's also brings me back to this thing we were talking about when
Yeah.
it comes to passion and excitement for the things you do.
Right,
You
right.
wouldn't have thought about such a scenario and play with it and really understand what this means for the world, right? Unless you were just really passionate and excited about the project.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was a great indication for us as Health Engine as well that this is someone who like this is they're having a lot of fun with it. So we can trust they'll
Yes.
keep working on this, they'll keep hammering at it.
Right.
So
Even during the pandemic,
Even during a
even the world is ending.
Yeah.
We're still working on it. Yeah,
That's
especially when the
fascinating.
world is ending, we're gonna work on it more.
Yeah. That's awesome way. And so again, kind of maybe we touched a bit on students listening to this
Right.
and how they would how they can look at their career as a founder. So I want to ask you also as a closing remark, students are listening to this, other prospective founders, what is an advice that you have for them now that you're really in the life of it, and let's say in
Right.
war terms, in the trench of fighting for
Right.
your startup and for their life, and we know it's really hard for founders.
Yeah.
So what is a piece of advice that you give to those prospective founders and
Yeah,
students?
I think I'll give as many advice as I can, but also
Please.
definitely ask Elon Musk, right? He's successful. He's a real success. But I think the number one is really get good at what you think is important. So I know UC Berkeley is a great school, Harvard's a great school, MIT great school, Yale. There's so many great schools, right? I think in addition to getting a good degree, you have to really do well in the skills that you develop, right? Get great at writing, get great at programming, get great at everything. If you can get great at everything, to get great at as many things as possible. And
Okay.
the degree is almost less important. I think whether you get a degree or not, right? So a lot of people didn't go to college, right? So I think, if you're a plumber, just get great at plumbing, just get great at it, right? I think just whatever you do, just get great at it, and try to get great at many things, as possible. Every day you get great at something, So I think that's the, you know, and if you want to make friends, get great at making friends, right?
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
get great at everything you do. I think that can prepare you to do anything. So whether you want to start a company or
Yeah.
you want to just have a great time,
Yeah,
and
it's more of a mindset because getting very good at something
Right.
I think is doable, obviously, but it's only doable for specific people to have this mindset, right? So it's like develop this mindset that if I'm gonna touch something, I'm gonna get great at it,
right,
and I'm gonna fight hard until I'm really good at this thing. Like essentially, how I interpret this advice, even for me, is don't do things for the sake of doing them. If you're gonna
Right.
do something, get really good at it.
right, and also like don't get a degree just like flop through it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think there are times I've seen they flop through it.
Yeah.
Just then you didn't learn, and then you spend the same amount of money and time doing it, but you didn't really learn.
Mhm.
So that, I think, to me, that's an opportunity cost, right? Like, because if you spend that money on and time, whether it's one semester or a year on something, and then you didn't gain anything, right? Like
Yeah.
getting a degree is great, is great, but I think the skills that you learned is more important.
Mhm.
So yeah, but definitely get a degree. Yeah, we're at Berkeley.
Yeah.
Definitely get a degree. You
Yeah.
don't drop out unless you have a great idea. You have a great idea, maybe you can drop
Yeah.
out. But if you don't have a great idea, finish the
Stick it out of
degree.
school.
Yeah, stick
Yeah.
it out. Yeah,
That's really interesting. Well, yeah, that's amazing advice, and I think it's important to also, I'd love if you have a story for that, if because when you have a company and when you're working with the unknowns of things, it can go up, down, up, down, up, down, right? And
right,
then you have to deal with a lot of the moments where you feel like everything is collapsing, and then next day it's like, oh, everything is great actually. So in preparation of that, you need to, I guess, trust yourself, and you won't
right.
trust yourself, and you won't know that you can do this unless you are someone who knows that they can get great at things and knows that they can do well in things. So for your experience, I relate this to how you were with your corporate jobs and companies, right?
Right.
You
Right.
knew that anytime you moved or anytime you moved to this new role, you were grade one. You were able to get to that top
Yeah.
location. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious if that comes to mind to you whenever you go through these hard times with companies.
Absolutely. I think that kind of like goes back to your question, should you start a startup right after high school,
Yeah.
right? Or right after college? I think it will get hard. Sometimes it's very, very hard. And how do you get through it, right? It's so do you have enough confidence in yourself that you can learn it, you can figure this out,
Hmm.
um, you can get through it. Um, you have to have that confidence, and that confidence needs to come from somewhere.
Right.
This is my opinion, right? But I could be completely wrong. I don't know. I'm not everybody, right? Again,
Right.
you have done it. If I've done this a million times, then I'm more credible, right? This is just one life, one person, right? So,
Hmm.
um, I think that confidence needs to come from somewhere. So whether it's from you did well in school, or you did projects well outside of school, or so that confidence needs to come from somewhere. Like, where the question is, like, I think I ask myself, or somebody need to ask himself or herself, what, you don't have to tell anybody, right? Just you ask yourself, like, why do I think I can be successful at this, right?
Hmm.
Is it because I'm more determined, I'm just very determined, or I can do this? But I also don't think that that's the only way of succeeding. I think
Yeah.
you can be, there are a lot of people who are successful. They drop out of college, right? Or they are successful after high school. I think maybe I don't give advice on
Hmm.
that one, because I'm not, you know, I'm not everybody, right?
That's
I'm not
totally fair.
40
Yeah.
people. I'm not 40 people. I think there are different ways you can be successful. Yeah, I think there's different ways. So I think
Hmm.
maybe what you do is you interview a lot of people,
You figure
and
it
then try to
out. Yeah.
get a kind of like interview 45 people, right, and see what they say. And I'm not a billionaire, so take my word for a
A future one for now.
right. I don't know. We'll see. I hope we're trying to get there, but
But
um,
that's a great statement, I would say. Like that, I think that's a question I'll go home and ask myself, which is like, if I'm gonna do something, why do I
mhm,
believe that I can be successful at it? Why do I believe that I will be great at this? Is it because I'm, as you mentioned, like more determined? I know that I'll tough it out, or is it
right,
because I'm just very good at this one technical skill? I mean, we've talked to a lot of founders at Health Engine, and I can say that they hint towards that same message,
oh,
which is
interesting,
like,
good
yeah,
to know,
so you're seeing in our cohort now, you see all the technical, then there's the business side of people, and they feel like they know this one problem, they thought about this problem more than anybody else, or they
right,
did it better than all of their peers, or they have a strategy that they know works better than everyone else on the market, right?
right.
And I think you guys have that too, as Xchain, and as like kind of the vision behind things. I haven't seen a vision like this before, and for us at Health Engine, that's why we're very excited to support you guys and believe that in the future billionaire project for sure.
Well, also, we serve our patients first.
And the point is, yeah,
Serve the patients first, and delight our partners, and increase shareholder value. Everybody else first, and then we're last. The founder last. Yeah, our patients first, partners and investors, and then it's us. Yeah.
that's awesome, mate. You're awesome, mate. And thank you so much again for your time. And again, welcome to the UC Berkeley campus. And as Health Engine, again, we're very proud to support you guys on this mission. And yeah, I mean, there's a very, I guess, important sentence for this interview, which is just be great at something,
Yeah,
serve patients, do
correct.
something for a higher purpose, for a bigger reason. So
Yes, yes,
that's
yes.
awesome.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I really enjoyed this. And thank you, Ali. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Aditya, for having me here. Yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you so
That's
much.
awesome. Thank you, mate.
Thank you.
Okay, good stuff.